My understanding is their appetite comes back sometimes with quite a resurgence. They basically gain the weight back right away.
Yep.
What is that telling us or not telling us about, what is actually being fixed here in terms of, that basic observation basically implies that there has been nothing fixed in terms of like the natural ability of the body to regulate hunger and satiety to a healthy degree.
Right. So you have to employ um, behavior, uh, implement behavior changes at the same time as having beneficial effects of a therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think one of the physiologic outcomes that becomes very clear in my opinion, from when people stop taking the drug is it really implicates the fact that obesity is a is a is a disorder of the brain, and it's not some behavioral choice in people. If people don't, people don't by nature choose to become obese or overweight, which I think is a common misconception in society, right? That people who are obese can choose to eat less or they're choosing to eat more, and that's definitely not the case. Um, and I think that is partly proven by what happens when you stop taking GLP-1 receptor agonists. The brain again comes back on with a raging appetite to reactivate those mechanisms for eating more. Um, and so those are really like the prime evidence that that obesity is not just a disease is a disease of sort of physiology, not just behavior. Um, you behavior changes.
I think I understand what you're saying on one level, but I don't understand it on another level. Like I ultimately don't understand the difference between, say, physiology and behavior. I mean, because at the end of the day, that's where all of our behavior comes from.
Right. So what I'm saying is behavior in terms of making a choice, right? Making a choice to exercise or making a choice to eat less, right? Um, and I think there's a position out there that would say that people with obesity choose to exercise less, or they're choosing to eat more, or they're adopting behaviors that are not beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, and people in the field think that it's not really those choices that make obesity um, manifest itself. There are effects occurring in the brain
Mm-hmm.
that sort of disallow those positive behavior
Mm-hmm.
choices.
Um, I understand the argument. I'm not sure I agree because by analogy, let's just take an easy example: smoking. Say,
Yeah.
well, actually, people don't choose to be addicted. There's a mesolimbic dopamine reward system. It controls our behavior. And once you take enough nicotine, you get enough LTP in the nucleus accumbens, and people can't choose to stop. So therefore, nicotine addiction has nothing to do with the choices people make.
Yes. And I think there's,
That's a very that's a perfectly valid argument to make.
yeah, I know I'm talking to a neuroscientist. So I forgot about that for a second. That, I might be getting into some dangerous waters, but there is, I think, pretty good evidence too that the centers that are important for regulating satiety in the brain are very closely tied into reward centers.
Mm-hmm.
And those would suggest that people who have, or who have overeating, those are clicking on reward centers that don't get turned off very well anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And um, part of what people are seeing with GLP-1 receptor agonists is like a reduced desire to drink.
Yes.
And perhaps that's tied into, this tempering of reward centers in ways that are beneficial.
Yes. Um, the potential benefit there is that you've got a knock-on benefit of basically you're reducing things like alcoholism in addition to helping people lose weight. The potential downside there is that this is another rimonabant situation where, rimonabant was a weight loss drug back in the 2000s, approved in Europe, CB1 receptor antagonist, eventually recalled because by tapping into the reward system, that all of these things, everything, there's ultimately kind of one reward system that, food rewards, drug rewards, sex rewards, they all tie into the same system. But when you dampen down that system, you dampen down everything. And in the case of rimonabant, that included the will to live, because they started getting people with suicidal ideations and depression.
Right.
So there's potential upside here and potential downside.
Right. Yeah. But I think like going back to the original concept, I do think that because we're stopping GLP-1 receptors causes reestablishes weight gain again, it does, I think really firmly implicate, that um, these parts of the brain can only be temporarily, suppressed, and that they're still like can be clicked on very easily.
Mm-hmm. Um, we've
But
already covered.
the other
Oh,
thing
sorry.
that appears to be true, just I think if I recall the original question is there are some people who don't respond
Mm,
to the weight loss aspect of GLP-1 receptor
yeah.
agonist.
Do you remember how like what percentage it is?
I think it's close to about 5%.
5%.
Yes.
Okay, so a sizable minority seem to not respond.
I mean, the amazing thing about those clinical trials that were performed was for weight loss was the level of meeting the primary outcome, like of weight loss, right? It was like almost 100% of the people meeting that primary outcome, which doesn't happen that often in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people that um, don't lose weight still um, receive the anti-diabetic benefits.
Mm,
So there's perhaps some effects of GLP-1 receptor agonists that are uncoupled from weight loss.
hmm,
And that's where I think there could be a lot really exciting discovery, right? Because in that fraction of people, maybe there are genetic variants
mm,
that would be predictive of lesser effects of GLP-1 receptor agonists or something along those lines.
hmm.